Hello everybody and welcome back. I'm Lincoln, and today we're going to go into Procreate first real quick to show you how to do a grid or use the proportional dividers to get your landmarks on the face so you know how to sculpt them. Right, so first off, if you don't have the proportional dividers, let's go in and I'll show you how to turn on your drawing guide and edit the drawing guide. And I always bring the opacity up, thickness all the way up. We'll bring the grid size up. Now, what I want to show you is I always start with the first measurement right between the two insides of the eyes. So grab the blue dot and drag it over. And once you drag it to one point, that anchors it. And we can expand it until it goes right to the inside of the other eye. And I usually go a pretty bright color too. So just kind of, you can come over and pick over what color you want, but that's brighter the better usually. All right, and if you don't have this on, I usually have assisted drawing turned on. Makes it so much easier when we're drawing. So I'm going to come up here and I have the Narendra pencil, so you can go into sketching and pick Narendra pencil. You can pick whatever you want. I prefer this one. It's got kind of a brush quality and it doesn't matter too much. And I usually go with a bright color, so I got bright green in here right now. Okay, so like I said, the first measurement I like to use is right here. Oh, cancel. I need to go to this one. I'm going to delete, add a layer. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I like to draw from up here and bring it all the way down to the nose, because most of the time, and this can vary between how wide this is, but there's a reason I like this particular one. Oh, I don't have it on. Turn on drawing assist. There we go. It just makes it quicker and easier to do this. So you can see that this does a couple things for you all at once. You get the set of the eyes between the eyes. You figure out where your eyebrows are going to start. You see where the nose is. All of that from just two lines. All right, so that's what I normally do, and you can do the same thing with the dividers. You can come up and just check the insides of the eyes against the nose, and it's like, yeah, it's dead on. Now this can be much wider, a little bit narrower. Not very often you'll see it narrower. If you do, it'll really be noticeable, because you'll see somebody that has the bridge of their nose is real narrow and thin. Okay, the next one that I like to use is going right in between the irises, right on the inside edges. And that is going to put you right about the size of the mouth, which is pretty close. So, yep, about right there. And if we could see the ears, usually this dimension is fairly close to what the ears are. It'll be a little bit bigger and smaller. Sometimes it's right on. Now, in real life, that's not true. If you were to measure that, take that measurement, and then measure the ears, it wouldn't be quite right, but because of the depth of field on a camera taking the photos, that measurement works out pretty good. Okay, so we can take another line, and I'll zoom in on this one so we can see it a little better. And I'll come from right on the inside of that iris down to the edge of the mouth. Same thing on this side. Oh, a little off. So you can see there, we're already starting to see a little bit of asymmetry in the face, and that's kind of the good thing to pick these so you can see what's going on. All right, now another one you need to take a look at is the width of this eye against the edge. Now, a lot of times you see here we're basically lined up with the edge of the eyelids for the most part. Sometimes if somebody's face is perfectly symmetrical and it'll divide up. Sometimes it'll divide up into almost 2/5 across the face, and if it does, the eyes, this width will be the same width as from the inside to the outside edge of the eye, but hers is a little bit smaller. Okay, another thing to kind of pay attention to, and we have this nice line on here, so you can see here, you've got a little something going on right there between the two eyes, so a little difference. Okay. So if you go from center of iris right here to the other pupil, it's about half a pupil off. So it just shows you there's a little bit of asymmetry on there. Okay. Now what we can do is, a lot of times, like I said, this measurement right here is here, and the ears. It will also be this dimension right here normally, because between the bottom of the nose to the chin most of the time is, we'll divide into thirds, and your mouth will be right in the center line of the mouth, will be right in that upper third. So we'll take a look and we'll flip this around, and it's not quite, so it's not quite the right size. And just FYI, I guess I didn't mention that. I'll have to put that in front of the video. I'm on 3:1 on this, so everything I divide is going to be 1 to 3. Okay, so one of the other big dimensions you'll see on the face is thirds. So if we go here from the bottom of the nose to the chin, about right there, and it's right to the hairline. That's pretty close. That's usually how you want it. So with using thirds, which is pretty nice, we can go right here and I'll check, and sure enough, we're right there. So I'll put a line right here at the bottom. Oh, not that one. Right here to the nose, to right here. Okay. And if we go from the chin all the way to the hairline. So that's kind of nice. It gives you a nice, your division of thirds in the face. Here, this is actually a good photo because you can see the scalp is about right there at the top of the head. So you can tell that hair is pretty tightly packed. All right. So another one you want to pay attention to is where the ears line up. A lot of times the ears will line up right below the nose, and she's breaking this a little bit. It's all about the different faces. This just gives you a good idea of where to put everything. So we've already got this pretty well planned out. So if we come up here, we'll divide our thirds. So you'd have bottom of the nose to the mouth up here. So that's your thirds right there, and that's pretty true most of the time. Okay, so if we come up here and we turn off the drawing guide, you can kind of see just the basic lines that it takes to kind of find, a face. Now, most of the time right here, you'll see that's the widest point of the face, right at the outer edge of the cheekbones, right by the ears. So you can give that a line and that a line if you like. So that gives you all your basic proportions. You got the size of the skull. This one pretty much can figure out exactly where the top is. We know where the eyes are going to be placed. Now you can also, if you want, see how close she is to symmetrical halfway, because your eyes are supposed to be roughly halfway in your face and pretty close. And this is what I find most of the time, that the eyes are a little bit higher up on the face than being dead center. So, right there about is where it would be if it was half and half. So this pretty much gives you all the information you need to get moving. You can always put some lines in here for your cheekbones. Another interesting one, and this doesn't always work out, but a lot of times right here, roughly depending on the width of the in between the eyes, will be just about the neck size, and on her it's pretty close. It's not far off, which is interesting that, our face is just to the inside. It's just interesting to me that the face can easily be divided up into thirds like this. Okay, so that's about it. Now, if you want to save this, you could go ahead and share this as is. If you want it with a grid on it, to do that with a grid, you have to take a snapshot, a screenshot. If you don't take a screenshot, it won't save and go to Nomad. So I'll just take a quick screenshot, and then I'll go in and I'll turn off the drawing guide and come in here and just turn this one off. And then I'll just take another screenshot. That way they're both the same size. Okay. All right, I'll be back in a few minutes and we'll go into Nomad and I'll show you how to do all this. Okay, so now we're in Nomad, And if you don't already have this, I'll have a link in the description below on where to find this. I have this on my Gumroad channel, so you can get the female head and the male head for free and just go grab it. And it's really nice because it has the head, the eyeballs, the irises, and the ears are all separate. So if you come up here, this is how it'll come in when you bring it in. Now you can grab all these, and a lot of times I'll go ahead and just add a group. And I couldn't do that before just because if I saved it and sent it to Gumroad and brought it back into Nomad, the group was gone. So we'll just name that head. And so that way you can easily move it around and whatever you want to do. Okay, so let's grab the head. Now what I like to do when I do these is I'm going to come up here and unselect everything. I'm going to add a box. Now the reason I'm doing this is I can easily put a photo image on here. It makes it super simple to bring your reference in, and the cool thing is it will stay with your image. And unless you're doing a lot of photos with this, we only have one view of the face, so I'm going to put one with the regular photo we had and one with the without with all the extra stuff on it. Okay, so we're going to remesh it though. We're going to take it up to about 500. If you don't do this, your photo won't look, it'll be all pixelated. Now if you've never cloned a brush, I do have my paintbrush cloned as a photo, and the main difference is over here, and this has changed again too in here, on the stroke on the brush up here for my clone brush, I have it lock radius instead of dot, so it won't just paint the image. And this is all going to be a little different now, so we're going to go to, you need to go in and change this to white, so it's already white, and we're going to metalness and roughness down to nothing. Actually, we'll give it a little bit of, yeah, we can leave that, give it just a little bump. Okay, so to bring a photo in, this would normally have, if we had this, like if you come in here, this is what it would look like. Click on that little square and we'll just bring one of them in. All right, and I've already imported them. If you need to import them, just hit the little import button and it'll bring them in. All right, so close this. All right, so you can see it's kind of cool because if you turn this off, now it's just going to show you there's no preview or anything, but this gives you a live preview now, which is pretty nice. All right, so if you turn the grid on, and this is another new change too. If you have this selected, you can just zoom in on that, or if you go to home, it'll just go to the home screen for the front of everything. So we're just going to pull and drag, call that pretty good, and our exposure's kind of dark in here, so let's bring it up so we can see what we're doing. That looks a little better. Okay, so now I'm going to clone this one, and it doesn't matter that it's already been painted. So then we'll clone it, and on this one, let's see, come up and grab the gizmo, or you can click it down here too. And we'll just pull this one over here, and this one, go to home, and I'll go ahead and go back down to my custom paint, custom photo brush, go in here and grab this one, turn that off, and we will pull this one in. So now we have one of each. Most of the time, since I already have the proportional dividers, I'm going to use the one without all the extra lines. Either way, it doesn't matter, whichever we want to use it. But you can start to see what we need to do to get the face right. Now, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to get the head, and we're going to start adjusting everything. And the first thing we want to do is this line right here, right in between the eyes. We want to make sure that that is the same size, and on here it's already pretty close, so it's not really worth messing with actually. What we do want to do though is, you can see where all this is, we're going to grab both the boxes and the gizmo, and we'll move these up so that the eyes are roughly, at least on one eye is lined up, so her right eye is lined up right there. And that's basically where you want to start. And then it's just a matter of, let's see, let's go ahead and get this one and make that one go dark. We'll work on this box for now. Now the good thing about doing this is you can just squeeze this right into the head and you can start working on, it's really nice because you can start working on, you know, just exactly how you want to shape everything. Now you'll notice the wire on the face is pretty rough. If you want to go ahead and adjust this, you can. I wouldn't do it quite yet because we need to adjust the length of the face, which actually by looking at it, you know, the bottom half of the face is not bad. We need to move the nose and the mouth down. So we can grab the move tool, make it fairly large. Now you notice a new thing on here, we have the normal. Now if you do that, I can grab anywhere and it's just going to pull straight out from you because it's pulling from the surface normal out, which is really nice. You used to always have to change a brush for that. Now this you can actually move around and it's a little bit different if you have that turned off. But you can see that by bringing this in, and we can bring this even over further, that we need to, you know, there's some adjustment we need to do. And if you really wanted to do it properly, you really need to kind of push it back about right here, because that's kind of the point where the cheekbones are the largest. And that looks about right. So we are going to go to the move brush and turn on symmetry. Click on this and just kind of start tweaking a little bit. And you don't want to move that too much because that is actually pretty close to where it needs to be. But you can see most of what we need to do is the top of the head, because the head needs to be, skull needs to be way up there. And it's going to look weird with no hair on it. If you actually pull it up this high, it actually looks really, you know, looks a little off. And, you know, truthfully, you don't have to go all the way up to that. That's completely up to you. But you can see it starts looking pretty weird. And you just have to kind of work it and get kind of a natural shape to it. And front of the head obviously is not going to look quite like that. Bring the size down because you need to kind of get rid of this big giant lump top of the head. Now generally this is a little extreme and that's obviously a little tall, but you generally on the skulls you're going to be kind of a crown at the center about the point of the ears, and just start working the head in to where the shape looks a little more natural. That looks a little bit right. Now what we want to do is move this out of the way or just make it disappear. Click on this because we're looking a little Frankenstein right now. And it's just a matter of just slowly working things. You can see by my pencil I'm not making huge movements at all. Like I said, it looks a little strange because there's no hair on here. Because if it was a woman's image, if it was a photograph, then she was bald, this would look a little more natural. It just looks unnatural because she has a ton of hair on top. That's a little flat. And generally males will have kind of a flatter area at the top of the skull and the back. Usually females have a little bit more rounded, natural looking skull. So, alright, so that's looks pretty good. Okay, like I said, it looks a little off right now because there's no hair and she, you know, the way her skull is. Let's take a look and see how this looks with this box back on. So that's about right, because you would want the, whoops, not that one, this one. You'd want the top of the skull about right there. And you could go a little higher if you want, but we're just going to put hair on it, so it doesn't really matter too much. Okay, so the next thing you can do, you can always just kind of scoot this up. You can always kind of check your layout, and it's like that looks pretty good, exactly where the eyes need to be. You can see the irises are a little off, and the mouth, you can see the mouth needs to get moved quite a bit. So what we'll do is just scoot it over and start working on the nose and mouth. Like I said, it's really nice having a reference on a block like this, because as you scale in and out, it scales with you, which is so nice. Now, this is the part where it's really nice to have the dividers. Now, you can leave them on 3:1 like I always have. When I'm doing just shapes and sizes, a lot of times I'll have a 2:1, but it really doesn't matter too much. So we can just kind of go, we got the eye size, and the nose is about right, so it's not too far off. It could be just a little larger, but not by much. I mean, it's pretty close, you know, by what we have here. Okay, so then if we go from this line right here down to the mouth, follow it through. So that's pretty close, but you'll notice that upper lip is about the same size. You know, that looks pretty close, but the lower lip is much larger. So let's zoom in a little. Whoops, I'm moving the nose. Zoom in a little bit, come over, and it's like, yeah, it needs to come down quite a bit. So you can move the whole mouth down. You can just use clay, however you want to do it. But this will work pretty good. And like I said, if you leave this mesh pretty rough at the start, and we'll change it in just a minute, we'll be able to change this quite a bit. Now what you want to do is take a look at your irises. The irises are pretty close on her too. I mean, maybe possibly it could be a little bigger. It makes it easier to see if you go ahead and just put some paint on it. It doesn't really matter what color, just something so you can kind of see. She's got kind of a dark green eye, I think, maybe. So we'll kind of go dark greenish, close enough, and paint them both. All right, that makes it a little bit easier to see. And if you want to put the pupils in there, you can. I'm just doing a rough. So they're pretty close. They're close enough for now. All right, so if we go in between these sizes right here, come down to the mouth. Mouth could be a little bit in because it's a little bit in on her. So we'll come in just a fuzz. Now, at some point, you're gonna have to start working on asymmetry, and it really depends on where you want to go with that. So I'm gonna leave it just for now. Size down, just down a little bit. That looks pretty good. Now the thing you want to look at too, if you have images that have a little bit of a profile, 3/4 view, you also want to look at this, and this is the point between the front of the nose and the chin, and you're looking at that negative space right here. So you're either going to be kind of straight down, which is more the unusual face, a little bit like this, where this is about average, and then you can get a little bit more extreme. If someone has a real small chin, a lot of times this angle would be fairly extreme. Most of the time, the upper lip is going to be a little further out than the lower lip, but we could probably pull that out just a little bit. So I'm going to do the surface normal on this, and I'm going to increase the size, and we'll pull this lower lip out just a fuzz. And that looks more natural. Okay. All right, that looks good. Now, if you want to change these and define a little bit, we need to define right underneath the nose there, and I cannot remember what that's called, but we're going to go up and use the crease, use it on sub, and I'll just come across right here. Needs to be a little larger. Like that. That looks about right. And it's obviously a little too high, so we'll just kind of knock it down. That gives it just a little more definition. All right, now I like to use the crease brush, and just kind of, it's easy to define the lips like this, the edges pretty easily, and that's a little extreme, but for now it'll be fine. Okay, at this point, this is kind of where you need to start thinking about your asymmetry, because you're not going to be able to. I would normally come over and deal with the ears a little bit, but I'm not too worried about them. They do need to be moved up, but I'm not too worried about changing their shape because she has hair covering them. So we can come over and go ahead and get the ears roughly where they need to be. So it needs to be right there, and we can just move this back behind it, and you can kind of see where we need to move the ears to. So now what you'll notice with the ears, there's the one thing with this setup, if you click on either one of the ears right there, you'll see that it's in the center. Click on the pivot, and this is another new change in here. You have a lot more options for how you want to do this, and I usually have it on the tap. I have it on first. That way when I tap right here in the center of the ear, that's right where it's going to be. Oh, screwed up. Turn off the pivot. And we can just move the ear up right there, and it looks like it could be in quite a bit right there, and that looks about right. So we'll click on this one and click on your home again, click on pivot, click right in the middle of the ear. I prefer right in the middle of the ear. And click on home as I moved it just a little bit, and we'll put it about right there. And that looks pretty good. Now click on this guy on there, click on this one more time and just kind of take a look. Looks like it could go in. Yeah, that's about right, actually, about right there. So you can see we already have this pretty much lined up, and it could be out just a little bit, actually probably turned out just a little. Looks like right there her ears are turned out just a hair. Like I said, it's really nice having the ears individual like this. And you can see here, you need to adjust the mesh to deal with the ears going in. Whoops, going the wrong way. Let's try that one more time. Just, whoops, need to be on the head. And just sub in with clay. And you would actually have to come in and do a little bit more sculpting to clean that up, because the jawbone would be a little different. So at this point I was going to take a few measurements, kind of take a look at where the eyes are in a different set, the mouth is a little angled, because you'll see that this mouth, her mouth is angled a little bit. That's a little bit higher on the right side than the left. And the same thing with the eyes, the right eye is a little bit lower than the left eye. So at that point I would just start working on the asymmetry portion of the face, because then you can start working clay on the cheek where she's got kind of that sideways smirk, and just kind of start working away that way. All right, at this point I'm going to go ahead and time lapse, but before I do, there's one last thing I want to do, because you'll see the wire on the face. We need to go ahead and mesh this up, and I would go maybe, I don't know, 400 or 500. And you don't necessarily have to do all of it, but you definitely need more mesh around the eyes, around the mouth, especially. The rest of it's not too bad. The nose on her nose is fairly close. It needs a little adjustment, but it's pretty close. If you find you need more, you can always change your wire. But you can see here, if we don't adjust the wire, this area right here is pretty jagged. So we can come in and smooth this all out, and then we can tighten it up with the crease brush and the all the rest of the tools we're going to use. All right, now that we have the face remeshed and we've done a little smoothing, I'm going to go ahead and jump into time lapse. I just want to show you though, it's like you can use either, the grid from your image. You can use proportional dividers, which these are nice just because you can divide it up in your thirds or halves, or whatever you want to use. The other thing you can do if you want is just to use a simple pencil, just to use your, something to use your comparisons. One side to the X, you can use a ruler, whatever. It's just the grid. If you don't have dividers, the grid is really nice. Like I said, set it up between the insides of the eyes. So here I am going through time lapse, and I'm just have my reference block going, and I'm moving it back and forth, moving it where I need it to see, and I'm just kind of working clay, using the smooth brush, and working fairly slow. We have a better resolution now, so you can kind of smooth off all that choppiness. Now, part of that was because these files are free that I've given everybody for the heads, and to put them on Gumroad to be free, a free version, they had to be a little bit lower resolution, so feel free to bump them up as soon as you want to. That's just not really a big deal. Now, I wasn't worried about getting every crease in the lips perfect, and it was more about just kind of showing you guys, if you're new at sculpting, how to come in and get a decent likeness pretty quickly. So, like I said, just kind of working through. And at this stage, I'm usually working fairly slow, just kind of looking at the reference, at the lighting. Now, a lot of times when you're trying to use a reference photo, if it's someone you really, if you know someone, or if it's a celebrity or somebody that has several photos where you can get a front view, a profile completely off to the side, and a 3/4 view, works really well. And you can put either 3 of these blocks up or put them on a cube, and you can snap the rotation, whatever you want to do. So it's, when you only have one photo, you just have to kind of work it a little bit. And you can see here I'm turning the sculpt to the side a little bit and just taking a look to make sure everything looks right. And just slowly using the crease brush here, and I'm still in symmetry, which is working pretty well still. And you can see here, I work on this for a little bit because it's like anybody says, you know, you've got to get the eyes right, or your likeness just is not going to be right. And it's one of those things. It's the first thing you look at a person. Basically, you're looking at their eyes. So if they're just not right, it's not going to look right. And you'll see at the end of this where I actually pretty much done, and then I go in on the left eye that's off just a little bit, and I felt like even though I was fairly true to the reference, it was almost too much, just because there's no eyeshadow and the eyebrows aren't colored in at the end. So I kind of adjusted everything down just a little bit. So still just working on the eyes. You know, it takes a little while. And what you'll notice here is I start kind of working a little bit, and I'm looking at the negative and positive space between the iris and the eye, and the white space between the iris and the edges of the eye. That's kind of where you start working it a little bit more and get a better view of the eye and how it's set in the face. So here, kind of adjusting things a little bit again. You know, I completely move the eye, and I'm just kind of using the clay brush, and I noticed that eyelid was getting pretty heavy on one side and thin on the other, so working these a little bit. Now, if you had a profile or a 3/4 view, you could get these pockets around the eye a little bit more true. Just understand that, you know, always like underneath the eye right here, you'll have almost like a triangular space right here. And then you'll also have like this little area of flesh and skin that kind of pokes out right here. It's more prominent on men. It's not as prominent on women usually. So just pay attention to that. And then, you know, how much this part of the eye and part of the head is set back, and how strong the eyebrows and underneath the eyebrows and the brow ridge itself. So here I'm just kind of adjusting the mouth because I didn't really like, you know, the mouth, and I'd moved the whole chin and the bottom of the face a little bit. So I was kind of working on that a little bit more, getting it a little more true. Now, this is the good thing about using this way. You can actually, once you have your sculpt pretty much set, and here I messed up because I was moving the wrong things. You can see I have no eyeballs all of a sudden. Is you can use this block, and you can see here on the right eyeball that right eyeball is pretty far off. And it's one of those things, it's like you have all your reference points on your reference image and all the lines that we put along with the grid, but getting it lined up on the face is not as easy because I wasn't using the proportional dividers as much going across like I should have been. So it does make it a little bit easier. So that's the thing. I mean, you can kind of cheat a little bit with the reference block because you can put it right in the face and just move it back and forth and line everything up if you like. like I said, this is a super useful way of using your reference. And if I was using the reference in a manner where you're just using it to like, hey, I just want to kind of make the eyes that shape, I'm not going to mess with it like that. But when you're trying to get it a little more closer, true to life, it's kind of handy. It's a nice little cheat. There's no reason not to use it, especially if you're learning. It makes it really, really easy. Now here I'm just kind of eyeballing, and I'm just using the clay and the smooth tool, just going back and forth. Now, like I said, wasn't going for absolute perfection, just a close likeness, so you can kind of see you can use these sculpt heads pretty quickly within, I don't know, I did this in under an hour, and with the time lapse it definitely sped it up. It was probably over an hour without the time lapse speed. So here you can see I'm just adjusting the nose a little bit. You know, she's got a little bit rounder nose. Now it's hard to tell just how far her nose is coming off the face, and like I said, that's so much easier if you have a profile or a 3/4 view, at least one or the other, to get a little bit more, you know, of how deep it is. But the female head has a fairly small nose. The male head has a little bit larger nose, a little stronger bridge. So you just adjust it from there. But you can see here, I've already started to get the eyes pretty good set. The mouth has got a pretty good set because both of those were kind of at an angle to the side of the face. Her right side of her face the features were a little tighter than the left side of the face were a little wider. And you can see here that the eye was just a little higher than it really needs to be, and I'll adjust that in a few minutes when I get to it. But here, just kind of running some clay, you know, making the face, you know, getting the cheeks in there a little bit because she's kind of got that little smirky smile to the right. So that's naturally going to draw these muscles up and bunch up the cheek a little. So just working on that and trying to get that set. Now you'll see there I was kind of filling in a little pocket that was a little trim, and that's kind of nice about using your, you know, taking your sculpt and rotating it. Use the light. Don't forget to use your 3 fingers swiping on the screen of your iPad or other device, and that will move your lighting. Now it would only move it left to right for the house lighting, but you can always add more lights, and you can turn those down, turn them off, add more lights and different types of lights. Now at that point, I was adding just that little fold underneath the eyes on the lower eyelid, and I decided to kind of change the eye color a little bit, and decided to just go with kind of like a gray tone all the way through, more or less. Now here I had flipped the image to the side, and I'm using that so I can find basically where the top of the hairline is. Just, you know, easy way to do it without having to actually grab the dividers to measure. So like I said, don't be scared to move this reference around and use it like you need to. Now what you'll see me do here is I've extracted a shell off the top of the head, and I always like to trim that because whenever you extract, no matter how smooth your mesh is, you're always going to have a real jagged edge. So I'll always use a lasso tool in the trim, and the trim is really clean. So I prefer using that. So here now it's just kind of making a shell, and like I said, I was not getting crazy with the likeness as far as, you know, making hair strands or groups of hair strands. Basically, I'm just going to shape it to go over the top of the ears, over the top of the head, and do the part on the center. And that's about it. So it takes a little time because there's a lot of, you know, it's a pretty big shape. So you just kind of work it, and I wasn't getting too crazy with making it perfect. Basically just wanted to get over the ears kind of like it was, and to just give it a basic likeness. So just kind of working around, and it takes a little time to get this quite right, you know, because you got to kind of work one side and then the other. And this is another part where they're not using symmetry because they're not anywhere near the same on the side. I mean, the hair is roughly the same, but as far as where the peak on each side is a little different, simply because she has an off-center part. So here's kind of working on the cheeks a little bit. And like I said, without having a good side view, it's just kind of a guess. So this one is more about just getting close features, getting the eyes about right. And you can see here, I've grabbed the eyeballs, both eyeballs and pupils, or eyeballs and irises, and adjusted them a little bit. And then I'm gonna end up moving, I get just the regular reference and put it aside, and I'm like, it feels like it's too much simply because there's no eyeshadow. And I try some eyeshadow and then I take it all off because I just didn't like it. I decided I didn't want to get that in depth with it because it was going to take a while, and it really does, to paint in Nomad does take some time if you want to do it right, especially with as soft as her eyeshadow is. So here I'm just kind of placing everything and just kind of getting a quick look. I decided to do the lipstick and then realized after I painted it that's too shiny, so I went back and increased the roughness and repainted it real quick. Now it'd have been a lot easier if I just masked that off and flipped it, but that's not a big deal. And then here I tried the eyeshadow and I really didn't like it. I went through and put some in, even softened the brush, and I just didn't like it because it is, like I said, painting in Nomad can take some time to do it right, and it just looked way too cartoonish. Simply because, there's no other skin tone, but it's hard not to want to do a little bit because, she had a lot of eyeshadow on, plus her eyelashes, and I didn't bother putting eyelashes on her either. That's another step you can really do to really get a better likeness, because it does look a little strange if you don't have the eyelashes in place. So they're not terribly hard to make. I just didn't bother doing them with this because I knew this tutorial was already going to be fairly long. All right, that's it, everybody. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I know there's a lot to it and there's a lot of time lapse, but it's a really long video if I didn't do that. But you can see here that I got pretty close on everything. So, this was not like a full tutorial on face and texture and everything, but just kind of give you a quick heads up of how to get a likeness, and this will get you on your way. All right. If you guys are liking these videos, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. All right. Thanks.